In this episode, a tour of my live streaming setup. Had a lot of questions about my particular live streaming setup. Now, obviously, there are a variety of ways to do this. Now, if you're a gamer doing live streaming, I would probably recommend you go over to the EposVox channel. He has lots of information specific to gamers, and we'll go ahead and put a link for that down below. Now, in my case, I'm mostly doing kind of question and answer sessions live streamed and sort of more educational oriented things. So it's really mainly me talking, and then I will also sometimes show an overhead camera to demonstrate various product things in my live streams. And also in the context here, I do all of my live streaming to YouTube. You can, of course, also do this to Facebook Live, Twitch, and lots of other platforms. Now, there are a variety of different things you'll need for live streaming in general. Let me just kind of run through the high level and then run you through my particular setup and also talk about alternatives. First of all, of course, you need a camera. You could use a webcam. In my case, we're actually not using a webcam. We are using, and this is where it's over the top, a Canon C200. So it's basically a sort of an ENG/cinema style camera that is way overkill for live streaming. The reason I use it is actually, I didn't buy it for live streaming. I actually bought it for corporate video work. But in light of the fact that there isn't a lot of corporate video work at the moment, it actually works pretty nicely as a live stream camera as well, because it has an autofocus feature that follows when I move around. So it just works really nicely as this. All you really need is a camera that can either connect to your computer via USB, so that's going to be a webcam, or you need a camera that has an HDMI or SDI output, and then we'll talk about capture cards as well. Now, if you're using a webcam that connects to your computer via USB, you're set as far as camera is concerned. If, on the other hand, you're using an external camera that has an HDMI or SDI output, then you're going to need some sort of capture card. And those come in a variety of different options. I'm actually using something that's a combined switcher and capture card called the Blackmagic ATEM Mini. The nice thing about this one from my point of view, and that really kind of enables the types of live streams that I do, is it allows you to include up to 4 different camera sources or HDMI sources. So I can plug in up to 4 different cameras or other HDMI sources, and that will send all of that as a webcam stream to my computer via USB. Not only that, but it allows me to switch back and forth between them. So I have my talking head shot here. I also have the overhead camera here so I can do product demonstrations, and I also have the ability to switch between 2 others. So sometimes, for example, I bring a guest on to the live stream, and being able to have a second camera set up, or even maybe a third and fourth camera set up so that I can get a close shot on them plus a wide shot on both of us, gives me lots of options. Now, you can also do that with individual capture cards. So for example, I used to use a Blackmagic mini recorder, and I also have an AJA UTAP, both the SDI version and the HDMI version. So depending on what type of camera you're using. This allows you basically to get one camera into your computer via USB. Now you can connect multiple of these devices up to your computer at the same time and then use your streaming app to actually switch between cameras. So there are a variety of different options there as well. Now, because I am way into sound, we also have a separate sound setup here. I'm using a Shure SM7B broadcast microphone. This is actually feeding into my Sound Devices Mix Pre. And the reason I use the Sound Devices Mix Pre is that this microphone requires a lot of gain. It's very, very gain hungry. So the Mix Pre can supply that without a problem. Most cameras can't generally supply enough gain for a microphone like this. So we go into the Mix Pre. The Mix Pre also offers me some additional benefits. That is, if I talk too loud, it has a limiter in it. So it will actually pull the level down before it clips and distorts. That's not something you have on most camera inputs, microphone inputs. Some do, and in most cases they're actually digital limiters, which aren't quite as good. This is actually an analog optical limiter, as I understand it, and so it does a much better job. So that's another benefit this gives me. In addition, when I do have other guests on, it also gives me the ability to have up to 8 different mic inputs at the same time. And if I have multiple people on, it does what's called Mix Assist. It actually automatically mixes our levels. So whoever's not talking, it attenuates or turns down their microphone volume, and that gives you an overall cleaner mix. So you get just a more polished kind of professional audio experience there. Now, how do I get the audio from the Mix Pre into the live stream? Well, there are a couple of ways I could do it. I could actually connect the Mix Pre via USB to my computer, and it acts as an audio interface, and it can send the audio directly into my streaming app, which could combine it with the video camera and then send it off to the streaming platform. I don't actually do it that way. Now, the only reason I don't do it that way, the main reason I don't do it that way, is that it would be out of sync with the video, because the video actually takes longer to get from the camera over into the Blackmagic capture card. So I could actually use my streaming software to bring it back into sync by applying an audio offset. That can be a totally valid solution. But in this case, I actually have a pretty good camera with an XLR input that can be set to line level. So what I do is I set the audio from the MixPre's output over a balanced XLR cable into the input, the line input, on the Canon C200. That way, the audio is always going to be in sync with the Canon C200. Now, there are a lot of other approaches you could take with microphones, and I think they're all valid approaches as well. You could use a USB microphone. If you do use a USB microphone, typically you can get that nice and close. So for example, here I have a Rode NT USB Mini. What I would do is I would take it off of this stand and put it on a microphone stand and get it up pretty close. If you can get this within 4 or 5 inches, that's how you're going to get the best sound. And so the only other consideration there is because we would be sending this separate from the camera, this audio to the computer separate from the camera's stream, then what you're going to need to do is use your streaming app to apply an audio offset again to get this in sync. And the way that works is you would just do a clap test. So what I would do is just record locally on your streaming app, get everything set up, get your microphone fed into your computer, select that in your streaming app as your audio source, then get your camera streaming over into your computer through your capture card into your streaming app, and then just record locally a clap like this. Now you can bring that video that you just recorded into your video editing app and see how many frames off the sound is. What will happen typically is you will hear the clap before you see the clap. And so you just use your arrow keys on your keyboard to go 1 frame at a time to count how many frames off it is. And then you apply that offset in your streaming app. So here, for example, in Ecamm Live, I can apply an offset of up to 10 frames for audio. And in my case, I found that I had to apply an offset of 7 frames for the NT USB Mini and my Canon C200. Now, this is going to differ for every single camera, so you're going to have to do the experiment on your own. But if you want a starting point, I guess you could start at 7 and see where that gets you. If you're trying to do this on a much lower budget, you could just use a headset microphone. So a lot of us for work have headset microphones. So you put the headset on and you've got a microphone, usually on a boom arm, that comes out towards your mouth. You can connect that to your computer and use that just like you would any other USB microphone. And in some of those cases, you could just use the earbuds that come with your mobile phone. That'll actually probably be better than the webcam camera, just because the microphone on your earbuds is going to be closer to the sound source, closer to your voice, and therefore probably sound a little bit better. So that's another option as well. Of course, you could use an audio interface. Here, for example, my Shure SM7B typically goes into my Universal Apollo X6 audio interface, but it could come into any other interface that you have as well. So here, for example, we've got in for review an Audient Evo 4, which we'll be reviewing here in the next few weeks. This is a very simple one. It's got 2 microphone inputs here on the back, as you can see, or we could show you a little closer here. A couple of audio inputs here, and then you stream to your computer via USB, as this is a USB audio interface. Then I can control the volume of each of the microphones, and I can plug my headphones in here to monitor how things are going. Now, if you're going to do the multicam thing like we've got set up here, if you wanted to do product demonstrations and be able to switch back and forth between cameras, or perhaps have multiple hosts or multiple guests on your live stream, having a switcher can be really helpful. Now, most apps that you use for streaming can do switching on the computer itself, so you don't have to have a hardware solution necessarily, but you will have to have a capture card or at least an input for as many cameras as you're going to have. So if you have, for example, 2 different cameras, you're going to need to have 2 different capture cards if they only each have a single input on them. So here, for example, on my AJA UTAP, I only have a single HDMI input, so I'd need one of these for each of my HDMI cameras or input sources. Now, the nice thing about something like the Blackmagic A10 Mini is that you have physical control. So I have buttons that shows me which camera is currently active, which is really nice. And I have a variety of other features on this as well. I can do picture-in-picture, so if I wanted to have my picture in the lower left-hand corner while I'm doing a screencast, I could do that. If I wanted to have, my guest as the major part of the screen and me just down in the corner or upper right corner, wherever, I could do that. It also has a keyer in here, which means I can do green screen from the switcher itself. And it also has a couple of microphone inputs. So there are a variety of different things I can do here. It has a different set of types of transitions here. So you can see I can do more of a fade transition if I wanted to do that as well. Again, most of the apps will allow you to do that as well, but having a physical hardware solution can make it a little easier as well. So it's not absolutely critical, but in my case, it simplifies matters greatly because now I can have up to 4 different cameras with a single device. Now, finally, you do have to have some sort of streaming app or what is sometimes called an encoding software. And this can take a variety of different inputs. Basically, what this software does is it takes all of the inputs from your computer, all of the webcams, all of the capture cards, all of the audio inputs, and allows you to combine them to create the stream and then send that stream off to the streaming platform, whether that be YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitch, or others. Now, in most cases, it also allows you to capture your computer screen itself. So for those that are gamers, you can capture your gameplay. For those of us that are doing more educational type things, you can actually demonstrate things on your computer as well, which is really handy. Now, there are a whole ton of different options here. I'm going to cover just a few of them just in the interest of time, but here are some things to consider. The first one is OBS. OBS is probably the most popular. It's available for Mac, PC, and Linux, and it is both free and open source, so there's no cost to using it. From my point of view, it's very, very powerful. On the Mac, when I used it a couple of years ago, it was a little bit quirky, but it was very capable, and if you kind of spent some time with it, you could get it to do pretty much anything you needed it to do. There's also kind of an offshoot of that called Streamlabs OBS, which is specifically made for streaming. There are both free and paid versions of this. You might try that one as well. There is a free trial, so you can go ahead and try it out and see if that works better for you. Definitely worth considering as well. Again, PC and Mac available. The one that I typically use actually is Ecamm Live, and Ecamm Live is a Mac-only app. It is on a subscription model, and the reason I use it are a few things. Number one, it is very simple to use. And number two, it also has some features that are really nice. You can generally get these features on some of the other platforms as well if you're willing to do plugins and things of that nature. But one of the main features I really like is that I am able to take the YouTube chat, and I can take any individual chat and actually put that on the screen as a lower third, which is really nice. It makes it really easy to engage with the audience, to answer questions, and to do what really works well on live streams, and that is connecting with your audience. There is also vMix. I'm not nearly as familiar with that. I know it's a very popular option, especially on the Windows platform. Worth checking out if you are on Windows. And there are lots of others as well. Now, there are some other things that we haven't talked about yet, and that is, first of all, lighting. In this particular case, I'm using the D&O 180W, which is an LED panel light with a softbox on it, and it's just up above my computer here, facing down. This lights both me, and it also lights the product demonstration area down here on my desk. So a single light, and that lights everything there. Then in the background, I have a little salt lamp over here. And I also have some small LED lights. These are the Aperture MCs, and they're actually RGB lights, so I can put a little splash of color up on the background to create some depth and separation of me from the background. So that's what I do in terms of lighting, just to kind of keep it pretty straightforward, but also to make it reasonably interesting from a visual standpoint. Now, if you are using a webcam, one of the things I found with a webcam, and you'll actually notice if I switch over to a webcam here, lighting with a webcam is quite different than if you're lighting with a proper external dedicated camera. What I've found generally with webcams, it's best to bring up the overall ambient lighting level in your room. That's how it seems to do it best in terms of exposing for a webcam. Now, some of the higher end webcams will be different. You actually can use dedicated video lighting, but on a lot of the other webcams, I find that if you do have additional lighting, it's best to just kind of aim it at the ceiling if you have a light colored ceiling and just bring up the overall ambient level. The webcams are able to expose to that a lot better. So for the longest time, what I did is I would just shoot a video light up at the ceiling to bring just this massive wash of light down into the room and just bring the light levels up well enough so that the webcam could expose for it correctly. Now, where do you start? I would actually recommend that you start one piece at a time because live streams are hard. It is a lot going on, especially if you're directing it at the same time that you're in it and featured in it. So for me, I would actually try to work on all of this technology one piece at a time. My first recommendation would be to get your sound worked out. Do something to improve your sound quality first. And once you've got that dialed in, then I would look at new cameras potentially, switchers, lighting, and things of that nature. So hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. And if you've not already subscribed, make sure you do that. And we'll be sure to get you more great videos on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Talk to you soon.